How's it going, Jack Tackers, and welcome back to another video for you guys. Today, I'm going to be doing my review for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the fifth Indiana Jones film we now have that came out last month. And finally got around to seeing it, wanted to talk about it, and I do plan on doing a ranking of all five Indiana Jones movies at some point. And yeah, I have some things to say about this one. I just kind of felt like this is a needed video to do because it's an Indiana Jones movie, and I recently rewatched through the whole franchise again, preparing for this movie, because I was pretty excited for this film, even though I was hearing some mixed reactions. For the most part, they were fairly negative, if I'm being honest. So going into this movie, my expectations were kind of in check. Like, I wasn't expecting this to be amazing, and was ultimately preparing for the worst, so I guess that's something I should mention. And I knew some things going into it, heard some stuff, just, I guess, spoilers, but it wasn't anything major, to be honest. And unlike Spider-Verse, where I was spoiled for pretty much everything in that movie, I was only spoiled for a few things with this movie, so that's good. But my overall thoughts on this film is that it's a fun adventure movie, and as a movie on its own, it's pretty decent. However, is it a good Indiana Jones movie? I don't know. And I ask this question with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull as well, because I like Crystal Skull. On its own, I think it's a fun movie, but as an Indiana Jones movie, does it work? I don't know. And I ask myself the same question with this film, Dial of Destiny. And Dial of Destiny, let's just talk about the elephant in the room here. Spoiler warning, of course, if you haven't seen the film. There is time travel in the movie, and again, going into it, kind of expected that was going to be the case. Dial of Destiny, I mean, the more you think of it like dial, okay, like a dial that reverses time or something like that, like you pick up on it pretty much immediately as the movie starts when they start talking about this dial. And yeah, it's a little wacky, you know. Of course, there were aliens in the previous movie. Or interdimensional beings, as they're called in that movie. But yeah, it's full-on time travel. I mean, at the end of this film, they go back to something like 214 BC. I don't know if that was the exact time. Archimedes' time. And they go back like 2,000 years into the past. And it's a little zany, straight up. It's, you know, all right, they're actually doing it. And I thought maybe they could have done something a bit different with the time travel aspect. Like, I think it'd be cool if maybe Mads Mikkelsen's character, like, starts to time travel. And, because, you know, in Indiana Jones movies, the villain always dies, like, gruesomely. At least that's how I feel like. It'd be funny if, like, Mads Mikkelsen's character starts to time travel, and then his, like, body just, like, warps and breaks apart, and we get, you know, kind of a scary, bloody demise. I mean, maybe it's too reminiscent of the ending of Raiders of the Lost Ark, but that was something I kind of thought about. Like, maybe they don't fully time travel, but, like, Mads Mikkelsen is about to time travel, and, like, as he's doing it, like, his body is getting deformed or something like that. Does that sound stupid? Probably, but that's something that was in my mind this whole time, because Mads Mikkelsen's character, he plays a Nazi, and first of all, love him in this movie. I love Mads Mikkelsen as an actor, but he's great in this movie and fits perfectly in an Indiana Jones film. I mean, he already was a James Bond movie in a James Bond movie in Casino Royale, a villain in that, and he was great in Casino Royale. And I mentioned James Bond simply because, as we all know, Indiana Jones is kind of Spielberg's, not interpretation of James Bond, but Spielberg always wanted to make a James Bond movie, and then George Lucas came along and they kind of, you know, turned it into something a little bit different. But Indiana Jones, for all intents and purposes, is like Spielberg's James Bond. That's, again, oversimplification, but it's definitely heavily inspired by James Bond. So just cool to see that kind of tie together. Like, Mads Mikkelsen was in a James Bond movie, and now he's in an Indiana Jones movie. I don't know. I'm probably the only person who really gives a crap about that, but it was just cool that Mads Mikkelsen is in the movie. And I do think his death scene where he just, like, he dies in a frickin' plane crash, like, okay. So I guess that's kind of a negative I have with the film because he's a pretty great villain, to be honest. He's pretty menacing. Of course, he's a Nazi, so he's going to be. And yeah, I think gives a great performance. And I don't know, wish they did something a bit different with that because I feel like for the most part, all the other villains have had like, even in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Kate Blanchett's character, she kind of, I don't know exactly what happens to her with that whole situation, but she starts like glowing and stuff, and she has a pretty like brutal scene, and of course Raiders of the Lost Ark and Mola Ram and Temple of Doom gets eaten by crocodiles, and I don't know, it's just like they could have done something a bit different there. Like, I don't know. I have this image in my mind. Maybe it's too similar to Raiders of the Lost Ark, but like maybe if Mads Mikkelsen just started deforming because he was like going through time and he was warping, or I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But moving on, the time travel aspect, I don't know. Again, people say, well, if you believe that voodoo and brainwashing can exist in this universe and aliens, then time travel shouldn't be an issue to you. I guess, brother. Like, I guess. I can't really, for some reason, time travel is just such a confusing. I guess, I don't know. Aliens is a big, jump the shark moment, but time travel feels a bit different as well. Like, I feel like aliens is a bit of an easier concept to understand than time travel, but I don't know. So that's like one of my main, like, kind of things I'm conflicted with about this movie is the time travel. It's still cool, and I was very entertained throughout this whole movie. It's 2.5 hours, and I was expecting this to be a bit of a slog. And I'll be honest, there are moments where I'm kind of like, all right, can we move along? And I guess I almost fell asleep a few times, but I think that's just because I was tired beforehand. Like, I don't think it was the movie's fault that was making me tired. Anyway, that's just a weird little thing I had to say. But it is interesting, the time travel aspect. It's like the main staple of the movie. I feel like it's the thing people are going to be talking about. And personally, just conflicted on it. I don't know. This movie will be interesting. Like, as we get farther away from it, a few years down the line, we'll see how I feel about it. But like right off the bat, I'm just like, time travel. Maybe I'll accept it. I feel like they could have done something a bit different with it, but oh well. And let's talk about some of the de-aging moments in this movie as well, because that's like another big thing that was kind of being hyped up. And if they weren't hyping it up so much, I feel like I wouldn't have cared that it does kind of look a little wonky at moments. It looks good enough. Like the opening sequence, yeah, it's probably some of the best de-aging we've seen in a movie, but it's still uncanny valley, dude. Like, it still gives me that vibe of like, I don't know, man. It's just, it feels like it's not Harrison Ford acting, you know what I mean? And it is, I guess. I don't know, is it? Or is it like a stunt double doing that? And then they put the Harrison Ford's face over it. I'm not sure. But it did give me that uncanny valley feel at moments, and it kind of was distracting. So that's a bit of an issue I have with the film in that opening sequence, which the opening sequence feels like something right out of Last Crusade. And again, if it wasn't with the de-aging, it would have felt exactly like Last Crusade, in my opinion. So it's a good opening sequence. It's just, and I think it works really well because then they kind of contrast it with the present and Indiana Jones being like, super old now at this point, let's be honest. And it's the 1960s. I really like the 60s setting. Wish it was played up a bit more. Like, obviously Crystal Skull was in the 50s, and I feel like, there was 50s music blaring every 10 seconds, and there is some 60s music in here, of course, but I really wish they played it up a bit more. Like, maybe it's just because I like the 1950s aesthetic, but I feel like the 50s was like totally played up. In this movie, the 60s, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like they could have played it up a bit more. And I don't know. And I did like seeing an older, kind of grumpier, lost Indiana Jones. He's, in a way, lost his purpose. Archaeology is kind of becoming, a thing of the past. And I think that's an interesting aspect to tackle. I know some people aren't really always cool seeing their heroes become old. Like, that's kind of a complaint people have with The Last Jedi. Not going to get into all that right now. Because The Last Jedi I don't really care for, but I think it works a bit better with the character of Indiana Jones, because that's Star Wars, like, you know what I mean. I don't know, Indiana Jones is like, it's still set in reality, you know what I mean? Star Wars, it's in another galaxy, like, yeah, it feels like we need to humanize Indiana Jones a bit more and see that, like, yeah, he's not invincible. He gets older now. He's kind of depressed, low key. And James Mangold, obviously directing this movie, handles this well, I think, in my opinion, just like he handled it with Logan, an aging Wolverine, which I'm kind of confused about when people say they don't. It just depends on the character, I guess. But, like, some people just get really in a hissy fit about when they see one of their, like, childhood heroes get older, like in a movie. And like that's like I've heard some people talk about this movie like, oh, I don't want to see old Indiana Jones. It's like, I get it, but also it's like, then why did you care about, I mean, I guess it's a bit different, but like, then why do you like Logan so much? I mean, Logan is a much better movie than this, but why are you okay with Wolverine getting older? I mean, I guess it's because his character works a bit differently and he's not quite as old as Indiana Jones is, obviously, but I don't know. There's just like certain things like that I think about when people are like, oh, I don't want to see an old Indiana Jones. It's like, I get it to a degree, but, anyways, let's talk about the Phoebe Waller-Bridge character, Helena, because going into this movie, I expected her to be annoying because a lot of people didn't like her, apparently. I'm sure some people did, but I heard a lot of people say that she was annoying, so I was expecting her to piss me off. She does a few annoying things here, but she's basically here just to say that, Indiana Jones, you're old, you're stinky, haha. Like, that's all she does, basically. I mean, that's, again, oversimplification of what she does, but by the end of the movie, she's on our side and she's chill, so I don't know. She's not that bad, to be honest. However, I will say I didn't really care for the new kid, the younger boy, Teddy, I think his name was. He felt like knockoff Short Round. And speaking of Short Round, why wasn't he in this movie? Maybe Ke Huy Quan was a bit busy with, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because maybe they filmed around the same time. Maybe he couldn't be in this movie. But that's like the biggest missed opportunity of all time, to not have Short Round return. Of course, we have Sallah return and Marion at the end of the movie, which is great to see those characters again. Sallah's not in the movie that much, but, he's there at one moment and another. And Marion again at the very end. Cool to see her, I suppose. And in terms of this being a good send-off for Indy, I guess it's a fine send-off. I mean, ultimately, it's pretty much the same ending as Crystal Skull, where, I mean, it's a rocky road because in this movie we find out Indiana Jones and Marion are divorced because their son died, Mutt, and that was kind of sad, which was a thing I was spoiled about. I knew going into the movie Mutt was dead, Shia LaBeouf's character. Died in Vietnam, because he enlisted, which it makes sense for the era. Obviously, that would have happened, and that was a sad moment when Indiana Jones is asked like what he would have done if he could time travel and go back in time, and he's like, I would have stopped my son from enlisting. That was a good moment, and it was sad though. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't like Mutt in Crystal Skull, but I kind of did, low key, just because I thought he was goofy and it kind of, I don't know, I liked it out of like almost in an ironic way. And I think Shia LaBeouf's a genuinely good actor, but of course he's kind of canceled at the moment, so he couldn't be in the movie. But it would have been interesting, like, if there was a version of this movie where he was involved at any point. I don't know, just something to think about. But it's a good send-off, I suppose. It made it seem like Indiana Jones was going to stay in the past with Archimedes. That would have, like, I don't know, it was kind of emotional, actually, the way he's just kind of like, let me be here. And then obviously Helena knocks him out and he wakes back up in his apartment, and it seems like he's going to get back with Marion. So it's kind of a happy ending, yada, yada, yada. He grabs the hat at the end. Pretty sure it was him. For a second, I was like, that better not have been Helena who did that. But I'm like, no, she left the apartment, I think. So pretty sure it was Indy that grabbed the hat. Because, they did that thing at the end of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull where it made you think that Mutt was going to put the hat on. And it's like, no, it's Indiana Jones's hat. So it was him. It was him. It was a really quick scene, though. So, I'm sure maybe there's some people out there who were confused. But no, Helena already left the apartment, so it wasn't her grabbing the hat. But I did like that kind of brief moment at the very end where he grabs the hat. And it seems like and the callback to Raiders as well, when Marion is, getting kissed by Indy, and, where does it hurt? Where does it not hurt? Or something like that. Or, that whole callback to when they're on the boat in Raiders. Liked that moment, liked that little callback. And, I think some more negatives I have with the movie, it's not really, I've heard some people talk about this as well, it's not really as memorable in terms of its action sequences. And, like, I know there's the time travel element, which is, like, the main thing about the movie, but there's not as many memorable moments in this movie. Kind of felt generic at times. There's not like the only location I really enjoyed in this film is the underwater scene, because that felt different for an Indiana Jones movie, and with the eels swimming through the skeleton and swarming Indy. That was really cool and creepy. And he's like, oh, they look like snakes or whatever. I think Teddy says that. So that was kind of funny. And I really liked that moment. And you have Antonio Banderas in this movie for like no reason whatsoever. Like, I don't know, there was a lot of these randos popping up. Like, oh, Indiana Jones has a bunch of friends. Where's Short Round though? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we have this Boz guy, I think his name was, Toby Jones's character. And at the beginning of the movie. And then we also have, again, this Antonio Banderas guy who gets killed. And that was like a sad moment, I guess. Even though he's not even in the movie that much. But I don't know. But yeah, that is a pretty like valid criticism, I feel like. You know, I feel like all the other movies kind of have really memorable action sequences, and this one it's just like, whatever. It's just kind of like car chases. I like the horse scene in New York. I think whenever there's a horse scene, someone riding on horseback in a city, like in an urban setting, like they did it in John Wick 3 and in True Lies. If you've ever seen the movie True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger, James Cameron movie, love that scene where Arnold Schwarzenegger's character is on the horse, and then I think he like goes in an elevator. Like, that's some amazing stuff. Kind of reminiscent in this movie of that scene where you have Indiana Jones on the horse running through the subway. That's a pretty good scene. You know, I'll say that. It was pretty good. And again, I'm just a sucker for like when anyone is on a horse, it just makes everything more badass for some reason. I think I just like Westerns and that type of vibe, and I don't know, it's just cool. But I rambled on and on and on. I don't know. Do I need to say anything else? I think I need to ask the question, is this the worst Indiana Jones movie? Again, I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I do plan on doing a ranking of all 5 films, hopefully within the next week or so. And I don't know, it might be the worst one, because I like Crystal Skull, I really do. And it's definitely nowhere near as good as the first 3, so I'll think about it. Right now, I'm saying Crystal Skull's better. And again, that might be a hot take, but I don't know. But it does have some good moments here and there in this movie. I just feel like, yeah, it is maybe not as going to be as memorable as some of these others. And the time travel element, I'm conflicted on a little bit. And the de-aging can be distracting at moments. Again, I know it's only used for like a portion of the movie, but maybe the movie's too long. Again, it didn't feel like overly long. I was entertained, but I don't know. It did feel like I needed something a bit more than what was just in this movie. And it kind of is missing the creepy factor a little bit, which we'll talk about this a lot more in my ranking video. But Indiana Jones to me has always had like a creepiness to it. You know what I mean? And there are moments in this movie where it's like feeling creepy. Again, I guess the eels. I guess the scene with the bugs, which felt like something from Temple of Doom. That was like a brief scene though. And like, I don't know, like Indiana Jones has always kind of felt like there's like, you know, exploring creepy stuff and like skeletons and, you know, secret. I mean, there is that in this movie, but I feel like I needed more of it. You know, I needed a bit more, just like creepiness. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore, but I always feel like Indiana Jones has been like kind of spooky. At least that's my, you know, way of viewing the character and well, not the character, but just the series, like Temple of Doom type of stuff, you know. But even Raiders had a lot of that as well. I mean, that whole opening sequence. But okay, I'm just rambling on. I can't wait to do the ranking video. I have a lot of things to say because I just recently rewatched it. But as a movie, I didn't hate this movie. I'll be perfectly honest. I didn't hate it. But it is a conflicting film. And it's one I'll be thinking about a lot more, and I'm sure my opinions will change. But I just got back from seeing it, so these are my initial reactions. And I'm sorry if this review's all over the place. I know for a fact it is. But oh well. I just needed to share this with you. And I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say about this movie. Down in the comments below, what are your thoughts on Dial of Destiny? I'm very interested to see what you guys have to say about it. And yeah, stay tuned for the ranking video. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new. Check out my Letterboxd and Twitter in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.